Well, hey there, this is Pastor Scott from the First Christian Church here in Lathrop, Missouri, and this is your Midweek Minute. You know, this past week we looked at Samuel and his life and how he was able, even in circumstances he didn't like, even in circumstances he probably didn't understand, he was able to focus on God. He had his priorities that, God, even though I don't like the direction this is headed, I am going to do everything I can to be a faithful servant. And that's one of those attitudes that's hard to find, and it's one that we must try to grasp onto and have. But so often we get so distracted from God in our lives. We have all these incoming things into our life, and it distracts us. Because I think, much like the people of Israel at the time, they was worried about the physical without any worry about the spiritual realm. And yet, for Samuel, it's, what do you want, God? He was not as worried about the physical as he was that spiritual. And yet, I think a lot of times we find ourselves in Israel's position. We have financial needs. Maybe we have these financial concerns and worries. Maybe we have too much money, it distracts us from God. Or we have too little money, and it distracts us from God. Our relationships with one another is another way we can get distracted. We always want to be going, and doing, that we forget that we do have this King God, that we need to care for that relationship as well. And we do it with a lot of other things. Those are just a few examples. But you know, I'm reminded of a congregant here in Lathrop that goes to church here. He told me, you know what, Scott? Whenever I focus on just the things that God puts in front of me, and I do just the things that God puts right in front of me, things work out. It's when I start worrying about all these other things that I get distracted and things go horribly wrong. But as long as I just do what God puts in front of me and I accomplish that task, and then I just do what God puts in front of me and I accomplish that task, he goes, things seem to work out pretty well. And I don't know if he was really referencing a biblical idea or a biblical passage in his own mind, but certainly he was. In fact, Jesus tells us about this. Jesus is talking about how we worry so much in chapter 6 of the Gospel of Matthew. And at one point, now of course this is talking about physical needs at the time, and he's talking about food and drink and clothing. But I think we can take it and make it applicable into so many other ideas just about our priorities and where our priorities lay. He says this in chapter 6, verse 27. He says, "Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life?" So when we read the media, whether it's social media or we watch the news, whatever it is, all the worry and anxiety that can cause, does that add anything to your life? That's what Jesus is asking here. And then he goes on in verse 33, he says, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." Is there more of a true statement than saying that each day has enough trouble of its own? Let's not get distracted about future possibilities, and let's just work on what God has laid in front of us. Let's find a way to get those distractions out of our way so we can focus on his kingdom, his righteousness. And so this week, that's my challenge to you. Find a way to get those distractions out of your life and start focusing on your relationship with God. Again, my name's Pastor Scott of the First Christian Church here in Lathrop, Missouri. If you want to find out more about us, please reach out to us. Our contact information's in the description section of this video. And I do pray that this message finds you well.